We're so glad you're with us today, either here in the building or watching from home. Either way, we want you to listen up, because here's the skinny. We've been talking a lot about getting involved, either in our Quest community or surrounding areas. So we have a few ways for you to do that. You can join in with our new City Fellowship Workday group from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday, October 10th, to help with some projects to better the lives of a few people here in St. Louis. September's Workday helped to clear out a woman's backyard to make it safer and more usable. Is this something that you could help with? Sign up for October's Workday at the ministry table, or you can talk to Mel Brown. If you're looking to get involved within our Quest community, volunteering on Sunday mornings is a perfect way to jump into the fun. Now that we've switched to a 2-service schedule, we could really use a few more people on our Sunday morning teams like tech, where you could run the soundboard or manage the slides, or our safety team where you help to keep an eye on the building throughout the morning, or even our parking lot team where you welcome people to church and make sure that they know where they're going. We could really use your help on Sunday mornings, so you can sign up online or at the ministry table. Our email newsletter is another great way to stay connected to what's going on here at Quest on a regular basis. If you're not on that list, you can sign up on our website at questchurchstl.org. Now, would you give Jonathan a warm welcome to the stage?
Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to Quest. I'm Jonathan. I'm one of the pastors here on staff, and it is so good to be with you today, especially with this warm welcome. So welcome to Quest. We're really, really glad to have you here. Today is a day of transition. I feel, at least for me, the transition to fall has officially started. We are full-blown into fall weather, which is great. I love it. Nice and cool, crispy leaves to step on. Really great. Now, with that transition, there's a battle that begins in my house. We have some things in our house that turn into a battleground, and one of them is the thermostat. So I don't know how this works in your house, but in the Walker house, it works like this. I like warm weather, and Krista likes cold weather. So we made a compromise when we got married, because we both have different preferences, to say, okay, if it's the season you don't like, we'll give you the override control to say what the thermostat and temperature is. Right? That's a loving thing to do, to say, hey, when it's cold, because I'm a baby when it comes to cold weather, I get to bump it up to what is reasonable and comfortable. Reasonable by my standards, right? That's how it works, right? So fall, though, is this debate, a back and forth of what it should be set at, because it's kind of cold, it's kind of warm. So that's every day right now. That's a battle in our house. So I need your help. Give me advice on how to settle this debate between me and Krista. So it's a season of transition in our home, in our world. People are going back to school. We have a lot going on. And today we also have a transition in the life of our church. We have 2 services. So welcome to the first time ever, 2-service Sunday morning. Welcome to 9 o'clock service. And we're really, really glad to have you here. And this shift, I think, is going to be really good, because it means second hour, we're able to have children's ministry starting up downstairs. So be praying for our second service, which we've normally used downstairs as an overflow room, but because of the larger amount of people we have coming to add children's ministry, it pushes us to 2 services. Thank you for coming early. And be praying for second service for the children. I think it's going to be a great way to minister to our kids, to encourage them in a challenging, confusing season for them. So pray for second hour. And we also have decided this Sunday to just add a little bit more into our world. We are going to do a baptism. Before it gets too cold, we wanted to celebrate. We had a few people who said, hey, I want to get baptized. We've given our lives to Christ, and I want to make a public declaration to our church community, to my family and friends, to say, I have given my life to Jesus. I have died with him. I have gone under the water. I've died to myself. I've said, I can't go down that path anymore. Jesus, I need your grace. And to turn to him, put our faith in him, and to then be raised up to new life, and to live that out in the community of faith with each other. So today we got a few baptisms. When you walked up, we had a baptismal outside. It is hot tub-like. Well, it's a lukewarm hot tub, but it's warm. It's not freezing, but it will be memorable. Now, the way we've set it up, though, for our people being baptized, it's going to be after second service. So I want to encourage you to come back If you want to go grab some coffee or some brunch, come back at 11, probably about 11:45. We'll have our baptisms outside, which is just a great way to celebrate and reflect on what God has done in our lives and in people in our church. So I'm really, really excited for that. Come back for that. So two services today. At 10 o'clock when people show up and they think it's one service Sunday, they just registered for one service, apparently. Be nice to them, but be a little sassy, okay, if someone shows up early. Now, with that, we're going to turn to meet and greet each other, and I want you to stand up, meet someone new, introduce yourself, and share one thing you really love about fall weather. Ready? Go.
Guys, we are super glad to be with you this morning to worship our God. We've got about 35 strong voices in the room. Can I get a woot woot or an amen or something? Good, I can hear you. Awesome. Guys, we're going to sing a song this morning called Evidence. And I just want to read through a part of this and kind of talk about it. And this morning we're going to hear some story and some sharing time of some pretty incredible things. And when you hear those stories, I think it's really easy to forget what it means and where it comes from. And there is this evidence all around us of the goodness of God and his faithfulness to us as we walk through these times. And the chorus of the song says, I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life. I see your promises in fulfillment all over my life. And actually this morning as I was sitting here looking at these words, something kind of hit me. We look at this a lot. We sing it all the time, right? We're constantly singing this in our heads and in our cars, but it says, I see your promises in fulfillment. It doesn't say, I see your promises that were fulfilled, that made me trust you. In fulfillment is an ongoing thing. It's a thing that's open. It's still happening. There's still promises being fulfilled that he's saying, I still need your trust. I still need you to be here. In times that you're weak, when fear comes, it says, fear may come, but fear will leave. Right? And so we're walking through these things, and we're going to hear this morning some of those stories. But this morning, we just want to worship. And if you haven't heard this song, it's pretty simple. It's pretty easy. When we get to those choruses, I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life. You look at the person to your left and to your right. That's evidence of God's goodness right there. I don't care who it is next to you. That's goodness, right? So this morning, let's go to God as we prepare our hearts. Father, we come before you and we let go of this week and we let go of the junk that has kept us from you. And Father, as we stand next to the people that you have put in our lives that is evidence of your goodness to us, we just say thank you for that and for that person and for these people and for this family and this church. And God, we open ourselves to you to sing this morning and to worship you, the only God who desires our praise and desires the relationship with us. Sing all throughout my history. All throughout my history, your faithfulness has walked beside me. Winter storms made way for spring. In every season, from where I'm standing, I see the evidence of your goodness all of my life, all of my life. I see your promises in fulfillment all of my life, all of my life. Help me remember. Help me remember when I'm weak. Fear may come, but fear will leave. evidence of your goodness all of my life, all of my life. I see your promises in fulfillment all of my life, all of my life. I see the evidence. I see the evidence of your goodness all of my life, all of my life. I see your promise. I see your promises in fulfillment all of my life, all of my life. See the cross. See the cross, the empty grave. The evidence is endless. All my sin rolled away because of you, oh Jesus. See the cross, the empty grave. The evidence is endless. All my sin rolled away because of you, oh Jesus. I see the evidence of your goodness all of my life, all of my life. Sing that again. I see your promises in fulfillment all of my life, all of my life. Why should I fear? Oh, why should I fear? Father, we thank you for this time of worship this morning, and we want to hear your word. We want to hear from you. God, show us where the evidence is of your goodness this morning. Amen. Go ahead and take a seat. I want you guys to watch this video to kick off our message this morning.
My name is Gina, and I contracted the coronavirus on March 12th, 2020, and this is my story. So on March 12th was the first day that I started to develop a fever, and I wasn't sure what it was. I thought maybe I had the flu or something. So I went home, kind of carried on with my life as usual, but I just kept continuing to have these same symptoms. They weren't really going away. And I definitely started to wonder, maybe this is what I have. Of course, I didn't want to believe that. I didn't want that to be what it was. There was no understanding of infection in the community, so it felt silly to believe that. But as things progressed, that's exactly what happened. I did have the virus, and I'm not quite sure exactly where I got it. I believe I may have been the first community-acquired infection where I couldn't actually say exactly where I picked up the virus from. So I was sick at home for a few days. I started to feel pretty bad. I saw my doctor. She thought maybe it was just pneumonia. Again, sent me home with some medication. It really didn't do the trick. I started to struggle with breathing, which was a really nerve-wracking experience. So I ended up calling 911 on the evening of the 18th. And I was taken to the hospital. At that point, then we decided to go ahead and run the test. And I was having some respiratory issues. And yeah, there was definitely a moment where, people thought I could go ahead and just go home and kind of pull through this and I'll get better. But while I was in the emergency room, after just, 30 to 45 minutes, I started to have a respiratory desaturation. So this number started to go below 90. That should stay well above 90. And I ended up getting admitted. I was put on a cooling blanket to try to bring down high temperatures that I was having. And by, I believe, the evening of the 19th, about 24 hours after I was admitted, I was put on a ventilator. So I could tell that my breathing was getting really difficult. I was just struggling. I was uncomfortable. I could, make it to the bathroom that was a few feet away to eventually where I couldn't even make it out of bed without struggling to breathe. I was being given oxygen and it just wasn't enough. So I ended up getting ventilated. I was on a ventilator for 8 days. So I would get breathing tests on the last couple of days to see if I could be taken off the ventilator. It was very interesting. I was dependent on my nurses to come in and to basically clear my airway when I couldn't breathe, or I'd wake myself up in these terrible coughing spells. But I was at the mercy of the people taking care of me. They were my everything. I would take a piece of paper and a marker, and I would write them notes about the things that I needed. Can you move my pillows? Can you get me the TV remote so I could, watch TV while I'm awake and on a breathing tube, which was a surreal experience. About the 7th day, they would test my ability to breathe on my own, and then that test was essentially the decision as to whether or not I could be taken off of the ventilator. And it happened multiple times where I would actually fail, and then they would have to wait. So every day the doctor would come in, he'd hold my hand, he'd tell me, okay, today we're going to try again. And so then they, performed this respiratory test, and I was able to be taken off the ventilator. And then they took me off, and I did well, in my recovery the next couple of days. I hadn't been out of a bed for 8 days, so I had to essentially use a walker for a handful of days to just regain my ability to move. And I had multiple other things that also had to be removed at the same time other than just a breathing tube. I had a feeding tube. I had tubes in other places. So that was probably more traumatizing than any element of this, is just being at the mercy of all of the people that are caring for me, and desiring to see the end turning out well. Obviously, there were 7 days I have no recollection of. I just know that other people were taking care of me. Other people were responsible of seeing me through this. So that's a very odd experience. I was in the hospital for about another week. And then when I was able to have no oxygenation, breathe completely on my own, and I was able to move fairly well, they were able to discharge me home. Naturally, you never prepare yourself for essentially looking at death in the face. One, you don't obviously prepare yourself, and two, you're told you need to prepare and make sure that your family is taken care of. But when you're in your late 30s, you don't make it a priority. So naturally, when I was in the hospital and I felt like I was truly looking death in the face, I thought to myself, I have not prepared for this moment. I have not prepared for my family to exist without me. And I thought for a moment, I need to write down on a piece of paper, give everything to my husband, give everything to Manoj. Because I would have my 401k or, these different things that you have to take the time to leave to other people, have the beneficiary set up. And I felt like I hadn't done any of that. And that, I think, was the moment that I thought, God, you have given me these children. You gave them to me a little later in life, and they're so small. And how could you take their mother away from them? Will I come off of this? Will I ever see them again? And I couldn't bring myself to write the last note, or turn my phone on myself and make a message, leave a message to them. I also found that to be the moment where I decided to say, Lord, this is in your hands. I'm fully giving this over to you. But I'm asking you, how could you give me these children and then take me away from them? And I left it there. And I decided I wasn't gonna go any farther than that. I wasn't gonna believe that I wasn't going to see them again. So I just decided I wasn't gonna prepare that I wasn't going to wake up from this. But I definitely struggled to have this innate sense of really crying out to him. I felt like I really couldn't do that. So I just trusted that God would do what was perfect. And so my family, they, I find out what happens or what their experience is obviously when I get home. But Manoj was by himself for two whole weeks. He took care of our 3 small children solely. Nobody was able to come over to our home. There was one great friend of ours who came over to watch the kids a couple of times just to give them a break. But otherwise, he fed them every day. He changed them every day. He put them to bed every night in the bed with him. He slept with all 3 of the kids. My brother also was there, but he ended up getting the virus. I gave it to my brother. I gave it to my husband. I most likely exposed all of my children. Again, Nathaniel had a fever one day, and that's really the only symptoms that my kids experienced, but they were on their own. And I came to understand and realize that people had really done profound things for them and helped them to survive. Manoj spent hours, countless hours on the phone praying with people. I don't know what that must have felt like for my husband. I think that was the first time he had cried in years, maybe ever. Just hours before I was put on a ventilator, as we're just kind of talking to each other. So, and then naturally I cried. But again, my tears were so full of, what will my family do without me? Which isn't fair to believe that they couldn't live without me, but I didn't want them to. So that was the worst part, is the thought of leaving them behind. So when I woke up on a ventilator, still I woke up. And that's when I knew that maybe God had been profoundly gracious to me and stepped into my story and changed it for me and for my family. So when I started to get fairly sick, I also got fairly worried that this was not going well. And I am a person who has grown up in the church. I've been a Christian the majority of my life, and I've felt like my walk has been pleasant. And here I find myself in this place where all these things that I'm reading about and I'm hearing about, and I'm reading other people's stories and I'm hearing other people's stories, and I, of course, think to myself, well, surely I will have this bolstering of my own faith in this experience. And that's not what I felt. I, again, was crippled with fear that this was going to potentially be the end of my life. And I couldn't put my faith in knowledge, which is, always will feel like a safe place. So I wanted to be able to reach out to God. I wanted to be able to have this overwhelming feeling and filling of the Word of God and these pleasant thoughts, but instead, again, I was filled with fear, and I actually couldn't even find it in myself to pray. And that was hard for me. So I felt at one moment when I did try to reach out to God that I would often just be overwhelmed with the thought of death, that this was the end of my life. I wasn't going to come off of a ventilator. If that was where I was headed, I was not going to come off of a ventilator. That's just all I could hear. And I just decided to stop. And I just couldn't pray for myself. I couldn't. I didn't have the peace that I was desperate for. So I did. I had to turn things over to God in a way that I was not in any way responsible for the level of faith that I was even going to have. That was going to have to be God's responsibility too. The Bible talks about how His power is made perfect in our weakness. I was experiencing that. I didn't think about that until maybe, well after this experience was over, but that's what was happening for me. And after I got home from the hospital, again, the most overwhelming feeling that I had was after all that I had already been through, which was hard, the best feeling that I had was walking into my home. Again, because I got to walk home, I got to come home. Actually came home with my brother because, again, I'd got him sick and he was in the hospital for about a day or two, and we actually were discharged home together. And so we walked into my home together, and I looked into the dining room and it was full. It was full of food. It was full of diapers for my children. It was full of toys for my children. It had everything that my family needed, all the while I was not able to be there to take care of my own family. These were the things that I did for my family, and someone else had to do those for me. And I was overwhelmed. And then began the story and the outreaches, just getting text messages and phone calls, and so many people reaching out to me, so many people telling me that they were praying for me, that they were overwhelmed at the thought of what I was experiencing. And you hear people say, I'm praying for you, and I myself pray for others, and I know that it's valuable, but when you're on the receiving end, it means something completely different. And that's what it was. I was hearing of people all over the world that had been praying for me, people that my husband had been connecting with. Then he would share my story with one person, and they would go and tell a large group of friends and family or their church members, and they would be praying for me. And people were giving to us sacrificially. There was funds that were raised for me, in case I didn't come home and my family needed more. And people met us in every way. And I had no idea that this was happening. That's what's so powerful about it. I am in a room by myself. No one knows. There's just a handful of people that know that I'm even sick. And 2 weeks later, people all over the world are fighting for me, are fighting on my behalf. And that was a profoundly overwhelming feeling for me. And I came to this place where I realized that when I could not pray for myself, I needed the body of Christ to lift me up, to hold me up, to be my bed. I would tell people that I laid in the bed of the prayers of others. That's what held me up. That's what kept me safe. That's what preserved me and did amazing work in my life. And I won't take for granted when someone asks that of me ever again. It changed me. And I saw Jesus in a different way. I saw him in a way that was so real, that was so tangible. And it came in the way of people I didn't know calling me and telling me how my story impacted them and how much they cried out for me, how much they reached out and they begged God on my behalf that I would be preserved. That changed my life. And, I want to believe that I can tell some sort of story that's so powerful because of what God has done, but the power came from what people have done for me, what people did for my family, for the way that people engaged. People are delivering us our groceries. People are going to the store and buying us more baby food, and they're reaching out. And not all of these people were necessarily of the Christian faith, but that is what Christ looks like. He looks like people reaching out and pouring themselves out because we're all made in his image. And that's his nature, his character, his goodness is to be the hands and feet. To be literally the physical hands and feet to bring us our needs. And we forget that we just do that. We usually just do that for ourselves, but sometimes we need others to step in and do that for us. So I walked away with this profound impact of what it means for others to enter into our story and to care for us. I know Jesus better because of what others have done for me.
All right, hey, you guys, I may not make it through this, but I'll pull it together, I swear. We tried to space ourselves a little bit out here, so to respect it, but I want you to hear this. This is a story I think needed to be told. God, I have four questions. So, Gina, first of all, what's it like to be sitting out there and watching your story, that had to be weird. Was that weird?
Yes, it's weird every time I've watched it, which has only been like 2 times, because that's all I can handle watching it again. Yeah, it's a interesting experience, but it's reminding me, it's a reminder of what I've gone through and what others have done for me. So I don't ever want to forget that. I think about how the Lord just used the word remember often, and he tells his people constantly to remember what I've done for you, remember what I've done for you. So, it's a gift really to me to remember, what I've been through and what others have done for me.
Yeah. Is there a painful part of it?
Yeah, just, the reality is I didn't know about 8 days of my life. And I don't know all the details of what happened in those 8 days. And unless someone tells me those details, I don't know how scary it really was. Until someone told me there was a day where someone was like, the doctors were telling some of my friends and family that I probably wasn't going to make it. And I didn't know that. I just thought I went to sleep and I woke up. But what I hear is, that there was some very iffy moments in time. So I can paint my own picture, but until I hear the stories of others, then I realize that the things that I went through were a true reality for me. I can't forget that at one point was my reality.
Right. Now, you've been educated and worked in the medical field for a long time. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, did you know too much?
Yes, I absolutely knew too much. What I knew was that everyone else knew too little. And that is where the greatest part of my fear came from, is that I couldn't rely on knowing this is a medical diagnosis that has been treated a cajillion times. Someone knows exactly how to take care of me. There's a tried and true method, and I'm going to get better. Instead, I was a medical professional who knew we don't know how to fix this, and 80% of people don't come off of a ventilator. And that's a very significant number. And I experienced this in a very early part of this pandemic, back in March when it had just gotten here to as far as we understood at that time, it was new. It was new to everyone. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know how to treat it. And that's where a significant amount of my fear came from, is that I can't believe that that the people around me, that science has figured this out and I will be taken care of. And not that you can always rely on that, but especially in that moment, I couldn't. And I think that's just another time that the Lord is like, you have to rely on me. I'm in charge.
Okay. So that brings me to the second observation or question as I watch this, and we've talked a little bit, is your story reminds me that sometimes we as Christians do what I call a Disney-ish Christianity. I've been to Disneyland, I don't know, I think probably 100 times. We lived in Southern California. We had season passes. We went all the time. So you walk in and there's a sign that says, Disneyland, the happiest place on earth. Of course, about 3 PM, you figure out that's not true because all the kids are screaming and yelling because they're tired, and all the parents are getting tired of the kids screaming and yelling, and it is the most unhappy place on earth. But sometimes we live our Christianity as it's the happiest place on earth. Everything smiles, it all gets better, everything works out, always, right? And but when I watch yours, you could have said, and I had perfect faith all the time, and I had the peace of God in every moment, and there was never a time of heartache. But that's just not what you said, and I really appreciated that. Talk a little bit about what that was like. When you said most of your Christian life's been pretty pleasant. Mm-hmm. That was a powerful word, I thought. Mm-hmm. But this wasn't so pleasant.
Yeah, I don't think I've faced a lot of traumatic experiences in my life, and so, I think I've been a Christian for the majority of my life since I was little. I've always been in church. I grew up in a very warm and loving home, and I hadn't really had to be faced with this type of test. And I didn't necessarily doubt that God was there or that he was real, but I didn't know how to experience his all of those good things in that very moment. I didn't have this automatic recollection of all these wonderful verses to bring me comfort. I was just covered in fear. And I think the fact that I had to do all of this alone, there was not one person allowed in my room that was my person. There's obviously doctors and nurses, and even the doctors and nurses don't want to come in your room. I remember one physician said, kind of from the beginning, we're not going to come in here a lot. And so it's a different level of fear, a different level of alone, and I think, we're made to be in relationship, and we can always say, if I'm alone, I know that the Lord is with me. But in that moment, I was like, I would really love to be comforted by my family and my friends, and I didn't have that option. I absolutely believe that that's that moment that there are people fighting for me, there are people caring for me, there are people holding me up. That story, in Scripture that talks about Aaron. Is it Aaron holding up the arms of Moses? Yeah. And God could have held his arms up, but Aaron had to hold his arms up. And I think in this culture, in American culture, it's easy for us to be very independent, be very much responsible even for our understanding of faith and our knowledge of faith, and not have to often experience those tests and trials. At least I haven't in my world and in my my current culture. And I had to come across my faith in a different way. And yes, it played out, and I experienced it completely different than I'd always thought I myself would experience a traumatic, encounter. And again, even in those moments, that knowing I just have to trust, that the one moment that I could have, I could act out my faith was, I'm not going to write down this note and say that this is the end of my life. I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to believe something different. And that's the only place that I could muster something up. And then the rest, I just hoped in the Lord, and and hoped for others to carry me. Knew that my family was there for me, and reaching out to Kim and reaching out to some of my my girlfriends that are healthcare providers that are also fighting for me from a medical perspective, calling my nurses and doctors, that I know these people, that they're fighting for me, and I had to leave it there. I saw again. I truly experienced what it meant to believe that His power is perfected, and that on my weaknesses, when I see Him, even if it felt blurry and unclear, it wasn't me holding myself up, and I had to see it that way. I experienced it that way.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think one of the things, there were people all over the world praying for you and holding you up, and you said one time to me, you said, Kevin, I couldn't even pray because all I could do was fight for my life. And that the prayers of people and other people. And it's interesting, I told her that we have a family that lives at the top of our street who are from India, and wonderful people, Vish and Anjali. And so I was telling them about you. And they're Hindu. They're not Christians, they're Hindu. And I was telling them about you, and they go, oh yeah, Gina. I'm like, well, yeah, how'd you know? He goes, hey, look, the Indian community is pretty connected, and we care for each other. And they were wanting to take you a meal, but there was no room to take you a meal because everybody else had taken up all the spots. He was a little disappointed, I think. I was like, dang, I want to do that. And so it was really cool that there were people. God used all sorts of people to support you and your family. Yeah. So you've gone through this amazing thing. And now I don't even think they're putting people on ventilators. I'm not sure. I heard someone told me decided it's not good.
It's like the very, very, very last resort.
Yeah. Okay. So
their power to avoid it.
So now you come out the other end of the side of this, and now you're back to work and your family's functioning. And Manoj is not here today because Manoj is.
He is in India. He left for India in the beginning parts of September, and he will be back in November. So he's there for a couple months. His mom is, she's been battling cancer here for the last number of years, and it's now metastasized into her lungs. So there's there's no definitive amount of time that she has left, but he really wanted to spend, some significant time with her. So we figured out navigating all the crazy rules of travel so that he could just go now and spend some time. So
So he
one
got
parenting homing it right now.
Yeah, here we go. So he had to go there and sequester for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then got to see her, and then he has to sequester again for another 2 weeks before he returns. So makes it for an odd trip, right? So now you come out the other side of this, though, and things are kind of back to normal as normal gets. And so this has changed your life, and you live every moment differently, right?
I wish I could say that. I kept thinking about, like, what does it mean when you go through something like this? And I had a friend that we were just kind of talking, and she said, "I'm sure you don't take life for granted." And I thought, I wish I could say that I just woke up and I woke up perfect and I don't waste one single moment. But you know what? My kids still don't listen, and they still need timeouts, and I sometimes need a timeout, and sometimes I argue with Manoj, and yeah, it just wasn't that type of experience. I think because sanctification is not a one-time deal, and it's not that I woke up sanctified and I woke up perfected. I got to go back to remembering. I have to remember what I've been through, remember what I was given back, and then how can I take these little moments in life and maybe, look at them and engage them differently in a way that brings more value and dignity to the gift that I've been given, and the people that I've been given. The gifts are my family, are my friends, the people that I get to encounter again. So, yeah, I wish I could say that, but I can't. But I'll remember, I'm gonna always remember. And even just sitting here and sharing my story gives it more value than it had, because I did so much of this alone. I didn't even get to engage people after this experience. I still had to stay away. I mean, I got treated a little bit like a leper sometimes, because people were not comfortable being around me because, again, there wasn't a lot of knowledge at that time. And so, even there are parts that were hard for me. I remember one of the most, again, I had these redemptive moments in this story, and one of the best moments was, again, I have really seen nobody but my family. My parents even were still keeping a good distance from them. A couple girlfriends got together at Beth's house. We hung out kind of at a table in the back. We gathered secretly, good circulation of air and all that. But anyways, and maybe I'm going to get Luke in trouble for telling this, but Luke sees me for the very first moment, and the first thing he says is like, "Can I give you a hug?" And I just started bawling because I got to engage like another human being in a way that I hadn't had the opportunity to do in the middle of a global pandemic, and being a person who experienced that. And it's those little moments that are like so cherishing and wonderful that he was willing to do that, because other people were just being cautious, and they should be. But it moved me to remember those moments and to cherish, those moments and how valuable they are. Was that your original question?
I don't know. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. I liked your answer. So it should have been my question. Yeah, that is powerful. Diane and I went for a walk with a friend the other day, and I accidentally touched, our hands touched as we were walking, and I was like, oh, that's weird. I touched a human being. That was just like, and I thought, okay, I live in a weird world. I touched somebody. I can't believe it. Oh, well. Any other thoughts as you come out of this, and as you move forward and reflect on life and the Lord and family and love?
I mean, I love this community. I love I love you all because of what you've done for us. And I'm grateful. I see the need for us to lean on one another more than I think I've ever experienced that before. I realize that, you never want to ask too much or need too much. And in the reality, some days you just do. And I'm grateful for, yes, this community. And then beyond this community is just culturally growing up in a community of people in the Indian community where they just do everything in their power to care for one another. I mean, we were getting meals for the next probably 40 days. People were bringing us our groceries. And even on top of people signing up, people were still just dropping food off. And that was primarily because Manoj isn't a big American food fan. So he had a secret connection to the Indian food that he would get secret meals. But people were just meeting our needs, and they were just willing to go to whatever lengths. You know, we're all supposed to be hiding in our homes, and people are like, we'll be at your doorstep. We'll drop off this food for you. We'll pick up more, formula. We'll pick up more diapers. And that was just the love of Christ. I always think back to, how you really speak of the chapter in Jeremiah about being in the midst of the people and meeting their needs. And that is what God calls us to do. He loves his people, and he loves when his people love his people. and we're all made in his image, and being his hands and feet to me, a believer, and being his hands and feet to those who are yet believing. That's what he's called us to do. So I just want to keep doing that. That's what I want to take away, is keep being that for other people, because it did something profound for my family. And Manoj was calling people all over the country. People were calling him in different Indian communities again. People were sending gifts. I don't even know who some of these people are. And, they were just pouring out in prayer with Manoj for hours. Just, prayer groups were meeting, and I was sharing my story with them because they were spending hours praying for me. That's something amazing to see in the body. And we need to do more of it. We need to love people well. And it comes in such a, I get to have this story in the midst of like such a time where things are so politicized and so polarizing. I didn't have to experience any of that. I just experienced the love of people and the love of God. And that's what makes me sad when it gets kind of twisted, that it's just an unfortunate thing that we experience from a broken world, and that we can counter that by loving one another above everything.
Oh, that's great. Well, you guys, I think her story, there's even more to it, but hopefully you've enjoyed hearing it. Now, I wanted her to tell her story, but and so we put it on video. We didn't have to put it on video because she could have said all that here, but because her story went literally worldwide, and a lot of people, you guys were praying for her, you were caring for her and for her family. And then it went bigger than that. So we thought, you know what, we need to put this on a video. We're going to put it on our website. We're going to put it on Facebook, We're going to put it, it's on YouTube. And I would probably say this. I know that many of you asked people to pray for Gina. And the only respectful thing for you to do would be now tell her story to those people. Send it to them. Let her speak for herself and for what God has done. And who knows where this video might go. Because I believe that she honors the Lord with this and doesn't politicize it and doesn't do all that, but just kind of tells the story. Let it go where it needs to go, and let's just pray that God would use it. And that you maybe could send it to your friends and your family and whoever. And it'd give you an opportunity to then explain why you have hope in life. It's a tool for you to use to touch the world. Okay? So in the midst of that, though, I just want to encourage you to do that. And we're going to close with a song here. This is the song that Gina brought to us, Is He Worthy? It's really an incredible song. So I think, I love this song, but I think it expresses what God has done in Gina's life. And in our lives, I think, as a result, okay? So, thanks.
feel the world is broken? We do. Do you feel the shadows deepen? We do. Do you know that all the dark won't stop the light from getting through? We do. Do you wish that you could see it all made new? We do. Is all creation groaning? It is. Is a new creation coming? It is. Is the glory of the Lord to be the light within our midst? It is. Is it good that we remind ourselves of this? It is. Is anyone worthy? Is anyone whole? Is anyone able to break the seal and open the scroll? The Lion of Judah, who conquered the grave. He is David's root and the Lamb who died to ransom the slave. Is he worthy? Is he worthy of all blessing and honor and glory? Is he worthy of this? He is. Does the Father truly love us? He does. Does the Spirit move among us? He does. And does Jesus, our Messiah, hold forever those he loves? He does. Does our God intend to dwell again with us? He does. Is anyone worthy? Is anyone whole? Is anyone able to break the seal and open the scroll? The Lion of Judah, who conquered the grave. He is David's root and the Lamb who died to ransom the slave. From every people and tribe, every nation and tongue, he has made us a kingdom and priests to God, to reign with the Son. Is he worthy? Is he worthy of all blessing and honor and glory? Is he worthy? Is he worthy? Is he worthy of this? He is. Is he worthy? Is he worthy?